Am I the a-hole for not attending my sister's wedding? I never thought I'd find myself posting on Reddit, let alone in the Am I the asshole subreddit. But here I am, grappling with a situation that's been weighing heavily on me. My name is Mia, and I'm a 30-year-old woman navigating the choppy waters of familial relationships and personal ethics. So let me take you on a journey that started 6 months ago. I have a younger sister, Claire, who is 27. We've always been close, sharing secrets as kids, going to each other for advice as teens, and even living together after college. Our bond was unbreakable until she met Mark and everything changed. Mark is everything I always feared my sister would fall for: charming, spontaneous, and recklessly adventurous. He swept Claire off her feet, and within 6 months he proposed. The wedding was set for later this year. I was excited for her, but had my reservations about how Mark seemed dismissive of anything that didn't align with his worldview. 1 week after their engagement, Claire came to me, eyes bright, bubbling with excitement. "Mia, you have to hear." "This?" she exclaimed, dragging me into the living room. "What's up?" I asked, half paying attention as I scrolled through my phone. "I want to have a big wedding. Like, really big. The best day of my life," she gushed. I smiled, but then she added, "And I want you to be my maid of honor." My stomach dropped. "Oh wow, Claire, that's a huge honor." She beamed, but that glow dimmed slightly when I reluctantly expressed my feelings. "But you know, maybe a smaller wedding might be better. With the way things are today, it's safer and less pressure." Claire's eyes darkened, and I could practically see the gears turning in her mind. "You don't think I should have what I want? You don't support me?" That hit hard. I stammered, realizing I had touched a nerve. "I just worry about you, sis." The following months were a blur of planning, tension, and frustration. Claire hardly listened to my concerns about Mark. Any time I attempted to discuss him, she would brush it off, opting instead to drown in her wedding plans. I felt like I was losing her to this whirlwind romance, and it left me helpless. 6 weeks before the wedding, Claire called me one evening and dropped the news I'd dreaded. "Mia, we decided to have a destination wedding. We're going to Italy." The excitement in her voice only intensified my anxiety. "Italy? Claire, it's so far and expensive. What about family, friends?" "We only want the people who support us," she said firmly. "So I don't want to hear anything negative. You should be happy for me." My brain was screaming, but my body remained still. I took a deep breath. "I just can't afford it. Plus, I feel uneasy about Mark. I can't feel happy being in such a foreign place for a wedding that I don't fully support." Claire's enthusiasm faltered. "What do you mean you can't afford it? I made a list of who I want there." I felt a pit in my stomach. Her disappointment was palpable. "Claire, I need you to be my maid of honor. I can't do this without you," she pleaded. I looked inside myself and could only respond with silence, heart aching. "I'll do my best, but you don't even want to go, do you?" She snapped. "I can't," I finally admitted. "Not like this." The air turned thick with tension. Claire's voice trembled with anger and hurt. "So what? You're going to let me down? This is the happiest moment of my life." The conversation spiraled from there. We argued for what felt like hours, until we ended with the words of an ultimatum. "If you can't stand by my side, then I don't want you there." I didn't have the strength to push back. I might be her older sister, but she was fierce, a Pied. Storm in her own right. I left that conversation broken. That night, as I lay in bed, I wrestled with guilt. Could I really abandon my sister on her biggest day? Would I be the asshole if I chose my principles over my bond? Over the next week, a darkness loomed in my heart. I distanced myself, shying away from Claire's texts and calls because they made me feel guilty and pained. It was hard to reconcile the fact that I loved my sister, but I felt like I was losing a part of myself in the process. Eventually, I made the decision to save my own integrity and not go to the wedding. The day of the wedding arrived, and I could barely breathe. I spent all day staring at my phone, watching Claire post pictures on social media. She looked beautiful in her wedding dress, utterly radiant. Flames of regret and sadness flickered inside me, as scrolling through her posts felt like a knife to my heart. Each caption was like a dagger, saying how perfect everything was, but within me, guilty thoughts churned. Had I been the reason for any of this? I stayed off social media that day and chose to isolate myself. It didn't feel right to wish her a congratulatory message when I felt so conflicted. Then, a few days later, I received a message from Claire. "I can't believe you chose your worry over me. I guess you'll always be the sensible sister who thinks she's better than everyone else. Enjoy your lonely life," that was it. The words stung, cutting deep because I knew I had tried my best to be a good sister through everything. My heart broke completely, and eventually I found the courage to share my story on Reddit, hoping for clarity amidst my heartbreak. As I typed out my narrative, I poured my soul into the screen. I detailed my attempts to communicate my concerns, my reasoning for wanting it a particular way, and finally recognized that I chose morality over aesthetics, but it cost me family. I hit post and sat there waiting, anxious for the opinions of strangers. Each comment that came in felt like a cold rush of validation or disbelief. Hours turned into days as the comments flooded in. Some users condemned me, others understood my struggle for principled living against family expectations. One user commented, "You did your best. It's not your fault she decided to let her choices create distance between you." As I read through the responses, I found solace knowing I wasn't alone in feeling split between love and morality. It encouraged me to think deeply about my family values and beliefs. Despite the pain, it was essential for me to stand firm for what I believed in, and that was empowering. Yet the ache of loss remained. I missed my sister terribly, and my heart would yearn for reconciliation. Life continued its path, while I sat in the shadow of regret. Months passed until the day of the wedding anniversary approached. I decided I could no longer let anger keep us apart. Gathering my courage, I sent Claire a heartfelt email. I expressed my apologies for how things unfolded, my love for her, and my hope that we could mend what felt irreparable. I invited her to meet and talk. Some nights were darker than others, but I kept hoping. I clicked send and lay back, on my bed, praying hard for grace for redemption. 2 days later, I was surprised when my phone buzzed and there was a response. Claire agreed to meet. We met in a small cafe, brisk with the autumn air. I found her sitting in a corner, eyes downcast, fingers fidgeting with her coffee cup. The years of unraveling distance felt heavy in the air. With small talk, sounded like a breeze. We caught up just a bit. Finally, bracing myself, I asked, "Can we talk about what happened, about the wedding?" "I was really upset," Claire answered slowly, surfacing her feelings. "I felt betrayed that you didn't support me. You were my closest confidant." "I know, and I valued our relationship, but I felt torn," I admitted as my heart raced. "I wish I could have understood you more, but I just couldn't stand by Mark." Claire's expression softened and she sighed. "I feel hurt, but I also realize I should have been more understanding. I should have listened." We spent the next hour pouring out our emotions, the hurt, the misunderstandings, the fears. Slowly, we started stitching together the frayed edges of our relationship that I thought was broken forever. By the time we finished our coffee, I felt lighter. "I miss you, sis." "I miss you too," she said, tears shimmering in her eyes. And there it was, the sound of love returning home. Claire wasn't just my sister through blood, she was my ally and my friend. Fast forward to now, it's been a year since that day, and Claire is expecting her first child. We've grown closer in ways I never imagined possible. We learned to communicate in ways that made room for each other's thoughts, aspirations, and feelings. Now I see that love can triumph, even through misunderstandings. I still think of that wedding day and how I had to choose my own beliefs. But life moves, and it taught me that even amidst drama, there's always a possibility for a new beginning. So Reddit, Aita for not attending my sister's wedding? In the end, maybe we all are a little bit the asshole in our own choices, but we can also choose to forgive. What mattered more was that, through every twist and turn, I recognized my sister remained close to my heart. Perhaps love is as much about holding tightly as it is about letting go, facing the truths we often bury below the surface. Am I the a-hole for cutting off my best friend? After she made a choice I couldn't respect. I've always been the kind of person who puts a lot of value on friendships. I believe that real friends are family we get to choose, and I'm lucky to have a circle of friends I trust wholeheartedly. However, my bond with one of my best friends, Mia, has recently come to a harsh realization that has left me questioning my own morals and whether I might just be the antagonist in my own story. Let me rewind to give you some context. Mia and I have been friends for over a decade. We met in college and immediately clicked over our shared sense of humor and our love for indie music. Through finals, breakups, and everything life has thrown our way, we've always been there, for each other. I would have stood up for her no matter what until last month. Mia started dating Jake about 6 months ago. At first I was supportive because Mia hadn't been in a serious relationship for a while, and it seemed like Jake made her happy. They met at work. She said he was charming and kind. Initially, I even found myself liking him. We had a fun game night with him, and he could hold his own against Mia's banter. But there was something off. I noticed how Jake often interrupted Mia, even dismissing her opinions in conversations. The crimson flags were small at first, then they grew into a crimson wave. He would make snide remarks about her career aspirations, belittling her talent and ambition. "You should be grateful to have a job," he'd say when she shared her frustrations about work. My stomach turned each time Mia laughed it off, brushing it aside as just his quirky humor. I tried to voice my concerns gently, but Mia was blinded by her affection for him. "You don't know him like I do," she would insist, a defensive tone creeping into her voice. That's when I began to worry. I felt an obligation to ensure my friend was treated well, an obligation that only deepened as I watched her slowly change, morphing from the vibrant, ambitious woman I knew into someone quieter and more reserved. Flash forward about 3 months into their relationship. Things escalated quickly when Mia confided in me that Jake had urged her to quit her job. "He thinks I should focus on starting a YouTube channel to showcase my art. He believes people don't want traditional career paths anymore," she said, excitement lighting up her eyes. I couldn't hold my disbelief in anymore. "Mia, that's completely ridiculous. You've worked so hard to get where you are in your career. You can't just throw it all away because of some impractical idea from him," I exclaimed, trying to emphasize my point, desperate for her to see it too, but instead of awakening a light in her, I saw a shadow fall across her face. "You're being unsupportive. He believes in me," she said, her voice trembling. Hurt, I offered her one last bit of advice. "If he truly cared, he would support you in your career, not push you away from it." I felt a pang of guilt for how I was coming off, but I couldn't back down. That was the moment in which our friendship began to fracture. Weeks passed, but Mia remained stubbornly in love with Jake and pulled away from me. I could only watch helplessly as she began isolating herself from events, sometimes even canceling on me last minute when I would invite her out. I felt like I was losing my best friend, and it was tearing me apart. Then came the final straw. The day was set for her to present her artwork for an important exhibit, a chance that had been years in the making. She had told me how excited she was, reminiscing about all the late nights she'd spent preparing her pieces. I marked the date on my calendar as if it were a national holiday, cutting short my plans with others just to be there for her on that special day. But the universe shifted against us. Mia called me that morning, her voice faltering. "I'm not going to the exhibit," she said, and my heart hammered painfully against my ribs. "What do you mean? Is something wrong?" I rushed out, concern flooding my tone. "Jake thinks I shouldn't do it. He said it was just a vanity project. He doesn't like being in the spotlight." She hesitated before finishing, and I don't want to upset him. I felt my entire body turn cold. "Mia, this is your chance. You've worked so hard for this. Are you really going to let him dictate what you can or can't do?" The line felt electric, fizzling tension thick between us. I don't want to fight right now," she responded, and in that moment clarity slapped me hard across the face. If she was going to let this toxic relationship control her life, I wasn't sure what good I was doing being around this changed person. Mia, I can't support this. I can't stand by and watch you give up your dreams for someone who clearly doesn't respect you. Silence engulfed her response, but I caught the hitch in her breath. I had crossed a line and a part of me fell silent as I heard the end in that stillness. If you can't support me, then I guess I'm not sure how much our friendship means to you, she finally muttered, and it felt like a dagger piercing my heart. I'm trying to support you by telling you the truth, I said, my breath shaky as the tears threatened to spill. I'm not going to be a part of this. If you marry him, I don't believe I can stay in this friendship, I blurted, the words spilling from my mouth before I could catch them. And with that declaration, I hung up, shaking with disbelief at what had just unfolded. I took immediate aftermath. Immense guilt enveloped me, clawing at my insides. A day passed, then a week, and she didn't reach out. I felt like I had extinguished a shining light in my life. Days turned into weeks, and I sat in quiet despair. Had I really done the right thing? Did I prioritize my morals over our friendship? The Reddit community caught my attention as I scrolled through posts one night, and an idea ignited within me. Maybe if I laid out everything, context, feelings, anxieties, they could weigh in on whether I was indeed the a-hole in this situation. Am I the a-hole for cutting off my best friend after she chose to stay in a relationship with someone who belittled her dreams? I spent hours typing and retyping, pouring out all the tangled emotions that had constructed this narrative. I hit post and waited with bated breath. As the first responses streamed in, I couldn't believe the range of emotions from empathy to straight-up condemnation. NTA, not the asshole, echoed throughout. Others chastised Jake's behavior, while a few pointed out my approach could have been softer. I spent an entire week engaged in conversations with strangers, sharing my perspective while feasting on their insights. But the one comment stuck with me. A user wrote, "Sometimes it's hard to let go of someone who has become a part of you, even when that relationship is toxic. You deserve friends who lift you, not weigh you down." That struck a chord. Did I deserve friends who championed my ideals? Maybe it was time I checked in on my own principles. After days of contemplating, I drafted a message to Mia, tentatively extending a thread of connection. Mia, I've thought a lot about what happened. I want you to know that I'm here. I'll always care about you, even if things are strained between us. I hope you find what makes you happy, whether that's with or without Jake. Just, please don't forget your dreams. I pressed send, my heart swelling with renewed hope, unsure of what awaited on the other side. I waited days that turned into weeks for a reply, uncertainty clouding my heart. Then one fateful evening, ding! A message from Mia lit my phone screen. I opened it cautiously. "Hey, thank you. I've been doing a lot of soul-searching too. You were right about Jake. I broke up with him. It was harder than I thought, but I need to focus on myself and what I want." My heart soared, even as tears spilled across my cheeks. I responded swiftly with, "Mia, I'm so proud of you. Let's meet up." We reunited at our favorite cafe, and slowly, through tears and laughter, our friendship began to rekindle. We shared everything, discussing dreams now floating back to the surface like ships freed from the stormy seas. I walked away that day with a feeling of renewed hope and clarity, realizing that while I might have acted harshly, I did so out of love and concern for my friend. It taught me that friendships evolve, and sometimes dissonance could ultimately lead to healthier bonds. No one is a one-dimensional villain, least of all me. While I may have been the antagonist in one act of our story, I was also the ally she needed to find her true self again. And in the end, realizing who I was came not just from the threads of friendship I nurtured, but also from the lessons learned in the depths of our struggles. Am I the a-hole for wanting to tell my parents the truth? So here's the situation. I'm a 28-year-old woman named Clara, and this past year has been a whirlwind of changes and revelations. I guess you could say I was living what people would call a picture-perfect life, a steady job, a supportive partner, and a seemingly happy family. But things started to unravel when I discovered something about my upbringing that shattered the only reality I had ever known. I was at my parents' house for dinner on a typical Wednesday, enjoying my mother's overcooked pasta and my dad's. Dad jokes. Halfway through the meal, as they were discussing their latest outings with friends, I noticed a photo on the wall that had always been there, but for some reason caught my attention that night. It was a picture of me as a baby, cradled in my mother's arms, but behind her was a younger woman with dark hair whom I didn't recognize. I couldn't help but ask, "Who is that?" My mother paused, her fork midway to her mouth, and her expression shifted. "Oh, just a friend of ours from back in the day," she replied quickly, a bit too quickly. My dad shot her a sideways glance, and at that moment, my gut twisted. I knew there was more to that answer than what she was letting. On after dinner, I couldn't shake it off. Who was that woman, and why had no one mentioned her before? I started innocently probing for information, asking my parents about their past, but the questions felt forced and their answers evasive. It was as if they were dancing around something significant. Driven by morbid curiosity, I began my own investigation. A week later, I found a box of old photo albums in the attic while visiting them again. After some digging, I came across an envelope marked with my mom's name. Inside were letters that revealed an undeniable truth. The woman in the picture was my birth mother, and I was adopted. Shock doesn't really cover it. My mind raced with questions and emotions. Why hadn't they told me? Why hide such an important part of who I was? My parents had adopted me when I was just a few days old, and all this time my childhood had been built on a shaky foundation of half-truths. I felt like a ghost in my own life. For days, I wrestled with whether or not to confront them. I felt a burning need to know more about my biological family, but the idea of putting my parents, the people who raised me and loved me through thick and thin, on the spot, filled me with dread. But how could they keep something like this from me? I had always believed that transparency was paramount in a family. I finally decided I needed answers, and if confronting them meant revealing how deep the deception ran, then so be it. When I finally approached them one evening that following week, my heart raced like it never had before. Sitting across from them at the kitchen table, I could feel a tangible tension in the air. I took a deep breath. "I found something in the attic," I began, my voice trembling. "Something I think you both need to explain to me." So I laid it all out there. The letters, the photo, my discovery that I was adopted. Their initial reactions were a mixture of shock and guilt. My mother's face paled, and my father's hands came up to rub the back of his neck nervously. My mother began to speak, her voice breaking. "Clara, we were going to tell you. We just didn't know how," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "We were afraid you wouldn't see us the same way." I listened, my heart torn between empathy for their struggle and frustration for the years of silence. "Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me? I've always valued honesty in this family." I couldn't help but raise my voice. "It wasn't about trust," my father interjected. "Periodically we thought about it, but every time we were reminded of how much you flourished since we adopted you, we hesitated. Have you flourished? Or was it all simply a facade, an illusion you had carefully crafted while knowing the truth?" I snapped back, the anger bubbling over. My life felt like a lie, and their excuses did little to ease my pain. The conversation escalated, emotions surged. I told them how betrayed I felt, how this news felt like an earthquake that had swallowed me whole. I wanted to scream, but I settled on tears that stung my cheeks. They in turn professed their love for me and reassured me that I was their daughter in every way that mattered. And maybe they were right. My parents had raised me, supported me through my milestones, and loved me unconditionally. But the betrayal lingered like an unwelcome shadow. They had chosen not to tell me because they were afraid of losing me, an ironic twist considering I felt I'd lost them in that moment. Days passed, and discussions shifted towards silences. I found myself at a crossroads. I grappled with whether I wanted to seek out my biological family, and if I did that mean betraying my parents again? Would wanting to reconnect with my past automatically mean I was turning my back on them? Couldn't shake off the feeling that I had a right to explore where I came from. One evening, under the dim light of my living room, I sat down and created a Reddit account. It felt liberating, like stepping into the anonymous abyss of honesty without judgment. I drafted my post. Am I the a-hole for wanting to contact my biological family after finding out I was adopted, even though I never told my adoptive parents I planned to? I balanced between heartbreaking confessions and cautious optimism, trying to convey the whirlwind of emotions I was tangled up in. Within hours, my post received comments, some supportive, some harsh. "You're not the a-hole, you deserve to know where you came from," one commenter wrote. Others chimed in with, "How could you betray your parents like that? They raised you." The mixed responses left me in a fog. I took a step back and realized that adoption must carry its weight and complexities, but the idea of choosing between my birth family and adoptive family gnawed at me like an infectious disease. I couldn't have both, could I? As weeks passed, I reluctantly reached out to a private investigator to help locate my birth mother. The warmth of my decision contrasted with the chill of guilt I felt each time I prepared to engage with her. It felt like walking a tightrope, and any slip could result in plummeting into chaos. Eventually, I found her, a woman named Sylvia, living a few cities over. What if she rejected me? What if reaching out made my adoptive parents shut me out completely? The stakes felt unbearably high, but a voice inside me whispered that I had to know. After a sleepless night of deliberation, I sent a letter to Sylvia, expressing my longing for connection without enough detail to overwhelm her. Just a simple message. "Hi, my name is Clara. I believe I'm your daughter. I would love the chance to meet." The waiting was torturous. I confided in a friend, my fears laid bare, and the reality of my situation peeled in layers like an onion, revealing raw vulnerability at each level. I sensed that the conversation I needed to have with my adoptive parents was unavoidable, an enigmatic force guiding me to that uncomfortable truth. Finally, after weeks of agonizing uncertainty, I received a response. Sylvia was willing to meet. I arranged a coffee shop rendezvous. The weight of my decision hung heavily upon me. Each heartbeat echoed in anxiety-laden anticipation as I sipped my coffee in a corner table. When she entered, my breath caught in my throat. She bore the same dark hair and piercing eyes, traits I had seen in that photograph long ago. As we introduced ourselves, I felt both hesitant and exhilarated. The first minutes were awkward, fraught with the force of years of lost time, but as we shared, a bond began to weave between us, fragile yet potent. During that conversation, I learned about her struggles and sacrifices, the very reasons behind my adoption. She had loved me but had faced circumstances far beyond her control. I began to comprehend the duality of my life, a puzzle of pieces that could somehow fit together if I allowed it. Afterwards, unspeakable joy mingled with guilt rushed over me as I headed home. It felt like unveiling an alternate reality just beyond my reach, but as I stepped through my door, the weight of my parents' love and pain engulfed me once more. I had prioritized my need to find out about my past without fully considering their perspectives. I laid awake that night, wrestling with my conscience. How could I share this with my parents? I needed to. The conversation that followed was heart-wrenchingly honest. I expressed my need to explore my biological roots, while also recognizing the immense love and sacrifices my adoptive parents had made. I was prepared for outrage, but surprisingly found understanding in their eyes. "Clara," my mother whispered, "we love you no matter what. This doesn't change who you are to us." I felt an incredible relief wash over me. It was as if I was emerging from obfuscation into the light. I realized that my quest to know my origins was not a betrayal but an exploration, one that needed not to sever ties, but rather weave new threads of connection. As I navigated my newfound relationship with both families, I found a delicate balance. I introduced my birth mother to my adoptive parents, an odd, heartfelt meeting that could only be described through tears, laughter, and plenty of coffee. Ultimately, I came to the realization that familial love isn't bound by blood alone. It's forged through shared experiences, struggles, and the warmth of a loving heart. I learned that my parents were grounded while also being open-hearted, allowing me the space to discover new aspects of myself. So am I the a-hole for wanting to connect back to the roots I had never known? Perhaps in some people's eyes I could be, and yet the truth is that by choosing to embrace my full self, I found not just the truth of my existence, but a deeper understanding of love itself. Am I the a-hole for not attending my sister's wedding? Hey everyone, I'm a 30-year-old woman, and I've found myself in a situation that's been tearing me apart. I really need some perspective. So here's the backstory. I have a younger sister, Karen, who is 28. We used to be really close. I remember our childhood filled with late-night giggles and long talks about our dreams. We even had a secret club where we vowed to always support each other no matter what. But as we grew up, we started drifting apart. I got busy with my career as a marketing exec in a big firm, and Karen was exploring various jobs trying to find her niche. Our familial ties hit a major bump when I became engaged to my long-term boyfriend Alex last year. I've known him since high school. He's solid, reliable, and we've built a wonderful life together. However, our engagement wasn't well received by everyone, especially Karen. Karen has always had this notion of a fairy tale romance. In her mind, anything less than that is just not worth it. When I got engaged, she pulled me aside and expressed how she felt like my relationship was boring, that I was settling. I was taken aback. It wasn't just an attack on my relationship. It felt personal. Why would my happiness upset her so much? In the weeks leading up to our wedding, I invited her to be part of the bridal party. I thought it could help bridge the gap that had formed between us. However, she declined, saying she had other priorities and that she would support me from afar. I felt crushed, but I tried to respect her decision. I didn't want to pressure her into something she didn't want. Fast forward to a month before my wedding, Karen announced that she was getting married too. I was excited at first. It felt like we'd have such a beautiful shared moment. But as I started to talk about my wedding plans, she started to become more distant. I remember one evening, we talked about the engagement rings we wanted, and she suddenly compared mine to a cheap bauble. It felt like a pack of wolves came up behind me, howling in unison. It was confusing and hurtful, and it shook me. When her wedding date was set, it was unfortunately just a couple of days before mine. I was stunned. It felt calculated, like she wanted to make my special day less significant, overshadow it perhaps. I tried to reason with her, but when I brought it up, she laughed it off, saying it was just a coincidence. I felt like I was being drawn into a game I never wanted to play. As the days passed, it became unbearable. Karen's wedding turned into her circus of drama. She made it a point to mention her day was going to be more spectacular, just to get under my skin. I started feeling edgy about everything around the wedding. The constant comparisons and the pitying looks from family left me feeling anxious. Then came the final straw. Karen sent me a text message and asked me to change the date of my wedding, because she didn't want her big day overshadowed. I could not believe it. I got angry and told her that it was out of the question. My wedding had been in the works for over a year, and I was not about to wrangle. We had a huge blowout, and I ended up saying that I wouldn't be attending her wedding. That stung, and ever since I made that call, I felt like the biggest jerk. I've been riddled with guilt, even though I know deep down that I was pushed to my limits. Family members have taken sides, and some have said I could have been the bigger person. But am I the a-hole? The story. As I sat there after posting my dilemma, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had just signed my own sentence. Would I forever be the sister who didn't attend? The backlight of my phone blinked as notifications flooded in. The days dragged, filled with replayed conversations I wished I could rewrite. My brother Jason had taken my side, which somehow made me feel guilty because he didn't like family drama. Mom had been texting endlessly, attempting to mediate between us. "You need to talk to her," she said relentlessly, as if reaching out was easy after everything that happened. Being labeled the a-hole was never my intention. I had always been the one who diffused tension, who made sure family dinners didn't escalate into shouting matches. But this felt different. This was my wedding, the culmination of years of love and partnerships. Why was I the one being made to feel guilty? As my wedding day drew nearer, I felt a heaviness in my heart. I watched as friends adorned bridesmaid, dresses, and my family prepared for a celebration that felt increasingly strained. Despite the excitement surrounding my preparations, I found a knot of sadness deep within me. It was as if the cheer that surrounded my wedding was dampened by an uninvited guest, guilt that refused to leave. On that bright spring day, I stood amidst a throng of people, cloaked in white satin. I was the image of a bride, but the unshakable weight of guilt bore down on my shoulders. My closest friends rallied around me, sharing laughs and wisdom. I forced myself to smile. Hours passed like minutes as I danced through the night, all the while wondering if I'd made the right call. The reception was swirling with joy, laughter, and the soft tinkling of glasses raised in celebration. Outside, the sun dipped into a golden horizon, painting everything with warm hues. But still, Karen hovered in my mind like a grey cloud, casting a long shadow on my day. Then it happened. It was during one of the most heartfelt moments when Jason stood up to give his best man speech. He touched on those sweet childhood memories I held so dearly. "Family is like lightning," he began. "It can spark joy, electrify our lives, or sometimes strike when we least expect it." The room filled with laughter, but I found myself drowning in emotion. As he continued, he deftly shared some amusing stories while slipping in the importance of being there for each other, of unity and love. In that moment, I realized how much I missed the times when Karen and I shared everything without reservations. When did our love become a competitive angst? I could feel the weight of my choice settle heavily on my chest. Would things ever be the same? Days turned into weeks, and although my wedding passed, the emptiness lingered on. I wondered if I should reach out despite the hurt. This was family, the ones we sometimes bicker with, but still love fiercely. I flipped through old photographs of us giggling on a family trip, blissfully unaware of the divisions that lay ahead. Eventually, after many sleepless nights spent tossing and turning over my thoughts, I decided I needed to make a change. I pictured my wedding day, but I also saw Karen's face missing from that beautiful memory tapestry. More than anything, I wanted to mend what was broken. "Maybe we need to talk," I texted her one evening, my hands shaky over my phone. It felt like I was trying to climb an insurmountable wall after all this time, but I had to try. To my surprise, she responded quickly, "Yeah, I think we do. Call me." That was it, no more layers of defensiveness. We were both tired, and I knew she felt it too. This season of conflict driven by misguided comparisons and hurtful decisions. When we finally connected over the phone, the distance echoed through the receiver. I took a deep breath. "I'm really sorry. I should have acted differently," I began. "Honestly, I felt hurt, and I know you did too, but I don't want to hold on to this anymore." "I know," she replied, her voice softer than any of our previous exchanges. "I felt like I was losing you. I wanted more for myself and for our family, but I see now that I was so selfish. I hurt you, and I regret it." Our conversation morphed into a heartfelt discussion, tracing back to the roots of our sisterhood. We acknowledged our missteps and cleared the air, letting go of pettiness. By the end of the call, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe we could rediscover that bond we cherished all along. A few weeks later, I received an invitation to Karen's wedding. My heart raced as I opened the envelope. A combination of excitement and nervousness surged through me. Would it be everything that she dreamed of? I saw a photo of her dress, a sparkling, intricate design capturing her vision of elegance. As I started preparing for the wedding, I felt that weight begin to lift. Expectations were set aside, and all that remained was love. The day of her wedding dawned brightly, a reflection of the warmth I had finally found within myself. Attending her wedding was one of the best decisions I could have made. I laughed, spoke to family, and lifted my glass in a toast to Karen and her new husband as I felt that heavy grey cloud fade away completely. To this day, I still reflect on that momentary lapse of judgment when I debated skipping her day. I understood, now that life and love were masquerades of imperfections. Am I the a-hole, I thought? Maybe dressing our flaws in love made us all stronger. I was grateful I had paused, reached out, and chose love, because in the end, it was never worth losing family. Am I the a-hole for leaving my best friend in the dust? Setting, a small town nestled between vast mountains, where secrets seem to linger like the morning mist. The first hints of autumn cast a golden glow on the trees, contrasting beautifully with the crisp air. Characters me, Alex, a 29-year-old freelance graphic designer with a penchant for adventure and a desire to live life to the fullest. Lily, my best friend since childhood, a 28-year-old schoolteacher with big dreams of changing the world, but often feels weighed down by her responsibilities. Story. As I sat in my cozy studio apartment, surrounded by the remnants of yesterday's projects, sketches strewn about like fallen leaves, I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. My phone chimed softly, the screen glowing to life with a new message from Lily. It was a photo, her fingers dancing light-heartedly across a piano, the sunlight illuminating her face, reminding me of the carefree days of our youth. But the caption, pinned to the bottom, hit harder than I expected. Just hoping to have a relaxing weekend. Maybe we can play some old tunes together. We hadn't connected in weeks, lost in our busy lives, Lily with her classes and me with my freelance hustle. As I considered her request, the sound of my roommate Jason bustling around the kitchen filtered through the air, dragging me back to reality. "Are you gonna go?" he yelled, his voice layered with concern. I sighed. "I don't know, man. I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed." Overwhelmed or avoiding commitment? He leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, raising an eyebrow at me. "You've been saying you want to do something spontaneous. Seems like your girl is giving you an opening." I knew Jason had a point. But the truth was, the idea of spending one more weekend confined to our small town felt suffocating. I wanted adventure, something that made my heart race. I replied to Lily with a half-hearted maybe, and for the next few days, the words lingered on my conscience like fog rolling through the mountains. Lily and I were supposed to be spontaneous, together, and yet here I was teetering on the edge of commitment. The Thursday before the weekend found me sprawled on the couch, spiraling through endless travel vlogs. An idea began to form, weaving its way through my consciousness. A spontaneous road trip. Alone. A quick escape instead of the same routine weekend with Lily. I felt the urge swell inside me, like waves crashing against a rocky shore. But that also meant I'd leave her hanging once again. As dawn broke on Friday, I made my decision. I sent a text. "Lily, I've decided to go on a road trip this weekend. I hope you have a great time with whatever you end up doing. Let's catch up." Next week. I felt exhilarated but also guilty. I knew she was counting on those plans. And still the thought of bare roads and expansive skies was too intoxicating to resist. The drive was swift and liberating, music blasting through the speakers, the wind tousling my hair. I rolled down the window and let the world rush in. With every turn, I left the weight of expectations and responsibilities behind, seeking solace in the freedom of the unknown. That evening, I stopped at a small diner nestled on the outskirts of a new town. While sipping coffee and enjoying an oversized slice of pie, I felt a twinge of guilt. I texted Lily for an update. "Hey, just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Hope things are good with you," she replied after a few minutes. But it was devoid of joy. "Oh, just grading papers. You're off having fun, I see." The tone stung like a cold slap. I thought about elaborating about my adventures, the starry sky I had slept under, or the conversations with strangers over coffee, but I didn't. Instead, I just left her hanging again with a simple, "I'll call you later." I spent the next day hiking, detaching myself from everything that felt burdensome, until I encountered a young mother battling with her toddler at the top of the mountain peak, both of them struggling against the gusting winds. An encounter that shifted the gears in my head. I found myself intrigued as I watched her laugh and scoot her son close to her side. I felt a sensation tug at my heart, memories of Lily dancing in my mind. She loved kids, imagined taking them, on trips just like this. Realization hit me. I hadn't just left my best friend. I had abandoned the part of me that yearned for balance, to be grounded yet adventurous at the same time. In the following hours, I not only saw the beauty around me, but I also felt the weight of my choices. Was running away really the answer? What if this weekend I had chosen connection over distraction? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with vibrant hues, I reached for my phone, contemplating the words I'd send Lily. Lily, I'm so sorry for not being there when you needed me. I realize I've been selfish. I shouldn't have made those plans without you. Can we talk? I sent the message, my heart racing. A moment later, she responded, Yeah, sure, I have things to say too. The next 2 hours were filled with tension, the silence stretching longer than I anticipated while I paced in my motel room. Eventually, my phone rang, and I hesitantly picked up. Allez. Her voice cracked, and I could sense the hurt radiating. Through the line wrapping around my heart like a vice, Lily, just hear me out, okay? I've been feeling like we're drifting apart. I get it, you want to be free, but do I mean nothing to you anymore? A moment of silence filled the space as I tried to collect my thoughts. That's not true. You know you're one of the most important people in my life. I wanted to be there, I really did, but I just felt so trapped. You could have talked to me, Alex. Instead, you just left. It's like you chose the road and nothing else, like I'm just a fallback. Plan? Her words pierced me deeper than the brisk mountain air. I had taken for granted that she would always be waiting for me, that I could come back whenever I found my bearings again. Lily, please let me explain. I thought I needed this freedom, but I see it now. I've been running away from the things in our lives that are hard to face. Like what, our futures or what we mean to each other? Her voice turned softer. Exactly. I didn't mean to create this distance. I thought if I had some thrills on my own, I could come back and be that adventurous friend you deserve. And I keep promising to be. A heavy pause engulfed the conversation before she finally spoke. You can't keep walking away, Alex. I need you. And this friendship means more than all of that. I guess I'm just scared that one day you won't feel that way anymore. Those words settled around me. Sometimes it was us who needed to be grounded in the love we built together. I'm here. I want to be here, Lily, I finally said. My heart raced not just from excitement, but from the realization that I no longer wanted adventure without her. I wanted to forge paths together, not apart. I need to know, Alex, are you in this together? That question loomed over me, heavy and profound, and with newfound clarity I replied, I'm all in, Lily. I will always be in this with you. Drove back home the very next day, my heart lighter, each mile an affirmation of what we shared, the laughter, the dreams, and the promises we made. I couldn't abandon that, just to chase fleeting moments of excitement. As I crossed the familiar boundaries of our town, the sunset cast a golden shimmer over the landscape, like a new beginning. Ultimately, it was not about choosing one path over another. It was about recognizing that true adventure lay in the bonds we nurtured, in the friendships that anchored us when the waves of life tried to knock us off course. And as I turned the corner toward Lily's house, I hoped that my new journey would unwittingly lead me back to her, hand in hand, ready to face whatever life threw our way. Am I the a-hole for telling my best friend they don't deserve her partner? I've always felt that being a friend meant wearing several hats. You're a confidant, a cheerleader, a source of comfort during life's storms. But sometimes, it also means becoming the unwelcome truth-teller. My name is Jordan, and I'm about to divulge one of the most controversial and disturbing moments in my life, one that might have forever altered my relationship with my best friend. The setup, it all started one humid Saturday afternoon, the kind where the sun hangs lazily in the sky, almost apologizing for the heat, while fluttering leaves offer some respite in the form of shade. Ava and I were sprawled out on her living room floor, surrounded by a chaotic mix of pizza boxes, half-empty soda cans, and our latest obsession, a relentless binge of a new reality cooking show. We've known each other since college. Roommates, turned best friends. Ava was fiery, vibrant, and magnetic in ways that made anyone in her orbit feel special, while I was more methodical, careful, the sober voice of restraint. It's a dynamic that felt balanced, but as I would learn soon enough, balance can sometimes tip, revealing troubling truths. Ava had been dating Liam for about 6 months. On paper, he was everything a girl could want. Charming, ambitious, and cute in that gently rugged way that set female hearts racing. But there had always been a strange air around him. Call it instinct, but my gut told me something was amiss. Yet despite my reservations, Ava adored him. I watched her glow around him, her laughter more vivid, her eyes brighter. I had learned the hard way that sometimes love can blind even the wisest among us. The breaking point fast forward to a dreary Wednesday afternoon, the kind that makes the world feel grey and heavy. I'd gotten coffee from our favorite cafe and headed over to Ava's. Coffee for me, cinnamon dolce latte for her. It was a ritual that reminded us of how simple pleasures can mend any rough day. As she opened the door, I instantly noticed something was off. Her eyes were puffy and her smile didn't quite reach her face. "What happened?" I asked, my heart racing a bit. She took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's Liam. We had a fight." In that moment, it all spilled out. Their disagreement seemed odd at first, over something trivial like leaving dirty dishes in the sink. But then it morphed into something more complex. She told me about how he had jokingly made comments about her weight during their last outing with friends. It didn't seem like a big deal when I first heard it. After all, people bicker and joke all the time. But as she recounted the details, the pain etched in her voice made it clear it hadn't been a light-hearted joke. "You know how he is, just kind of playful," she said, a hint of doubt creeping into her tone as if she were debating it herself. But I could see the hurt beneath the surface. "It just stung more than I thought it would." I nodded, encouraging. But as the evening wore on, something deeper began to stir inside me. A raw, protective instinct emerged. I couldn't shake the feeling that Liam was crossing boundaries, tiptoeing dangerously close to emotional abuse disguised as humor. The confrontation weeks passed, and their relationship visibly deteriorated. Ava flowed between insecurity and desperation, chasing Liam's approval like a moth drawn to a flickering flame, while simultaneously trying to convince herself he was the right guy. Meanwhile, I was growing increasingly concerned. One fateful evening, I finally reached my breaking point. Ava and Liam had come over for dinner, a standard setup with a pleasant food spread that provided a facade of normalcy. But the tension was palpable. I watched as Milo, our mutual friend, made a playful joke at Ava's expense. "You'll burn it down if you don't get closer to the stove, Ava," he teased, and I noticed Liam's immediate reaction, a chuckle that quickly morphed into smirking eyes and a barely concealed smirk. The tension coiled tighter in my stomach. Once everyone departed, I broached the subject with her cautiously, my voice low. "Ava, are you happy with Liam?" She hesitated before answering. "He makes me laugh." "That's not answering my question," I pressed, my patience thinning. "Do you feel good about yourself when you're around him?" "I don't know," she murmured, scratching her arm nervously. "Sometimes I just feel like I'm not enough." That was it. My heart raced, fueled by a cocktail of concern and anger. "Ava, no one should make you feel that way. Don't you see? Liam isn't worth it." She furrowed her brow, and I knew it was time to tread carefully but confidently. "Ava, I think you deserve someone who lifts you up, not drags you down. It's not just a joking comment, it's a pattern." "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm saying maybe he doesn't deserve you," I responded, fervor building within me. The silence that followed felt electric, charged with the weight of our years of friendship, the secrets we shared, and the trust we built. "What do you mean?" Her tone shifted, a jagged edge creeping in. "Maybe it's time to evaluate Liam for what he truly is. He's charming and funny, but he also belittles you. That's not love. Love respects." Ava's face fell. I could see her struggling with my words, processing the reality I had just forcefully thrust upon her, but I stood firm. You'd be doing yourself a massive disservice if you continued to settle. The fallout in. The days that followed, the fallout was swift and brutal. Ava pulled away from me. Suddenly I was the enemy, the person who had dared question her happiness. Despite my intentions, I'd become the bad guy in what felt like a tragic Shakespearean drama unfolding before me. She blocked me on social media and cancelled our dinner plans. I felt like a balloon that burst suddenly, my heart deflated. Guilt mingling with regret. Could I have handled it differently? Should I have kept quiet? I was managing this tempest of doubt when an unexpected text arrived one evening. It was Liam. "Hey Jordan, can we talk?" My heart raced for a moment. I assumed he had gotten wind of my conversation with Ava. Slowly I typed out a response, feeling the weight of my decision throb deep in my chest. I agreed. Anything to get clarity. The evening was tense, filled with layered awkwardness as we sat on the edge of a table in a small cafe. Liam started with polite conversation about work, but something about his demeanor settled at the back of my mind. "I just wanted to understand why you think it's okay to talk about Ava like that," I started, my voice steady, wary of the grounds I was treading on. "Talk about her?" He pushed back, brows raised slightly in disbelief. "I care for Ava, surely you can see that. Is that why you joke about her weight?" I countered, unwavering. "You're allowed to joke, but there's a line, Liam." He folded his arms. "We joke about each other, that's normal, you don't know our relationship." "Maybe not," I replied evenly. "But I know enough to see she's struggling." At that moment a shift occurred. His easy smile wavered, replaced by something darker. "You think you're some kind of savior," he snapped, his voice louder than it should have been. "You have no idea about our dynamic." "It's not dynamic if one person is uncomfortable all the time," I shot back, meeting his eyes with a coolness that belied the turmoil within. The confrontation left us both rattled, and I could see the anger sparking in Liam's eyes, like a lit fuse waiting to explode. "You're going to ruin everything," he hissed, his tone threatening. Then he mumbled something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like overprotective a-hole. "The reckoning that night," Ava called. It was after midnight when I answered, sleep clinging to my eyelids. "Can we talk?" she whispered, her voice broken yet hopeful. We agreed to meet in the park, the same park where we spent countless afternoons, dancing in the sunlight, giggling over our childish dreams. "Ava," I started as we settled on a weathered bench, "I'm sorry for pushing you. Don't apologize," she interrupted softly, wiping the moisture from her eyes. "You were right. It hurt to hear it, but you were right." I swallowed, unsure if I should draw close to her or keep my distance. "You know I'm only looking out for you, right?" "I know," she said, offering a small nod, "but I didn't want to believe it. I love him." "I get it, but love shouldn't hurt like that," I argued gently, wanting her to truly understand what I meant. The moment hung delicately between us, a fragile tapestry unraveling and waiting to be rewoven into something new. In the days that followed, we started repairing the bond we had once nearly broken. She confided in me about her insecurities around Liam. The bitter truth settled heavier, a truth that led her to a difficult decision, which she eventually made with renewed confidence. Ava chose to end things with Liam. "You're right," she told me one evening over steaming cups of herbal tea. "It doesn't feel like love anymore. I deserve better." As the sun dipped below the horizon, a burden I didn't realize I was carrying began to lift, revealing something softer beneath: hope. I felt a new determination forming in our friendship, one of unapologetic honesty. Conclusion: life doesn't always present situations neatly wrapped in a bow, nor do relationships come with a clear handbook on how to traverse them. But sometimes, the hardest conversations can lead to the most transformative decisions. I feared that my honesty about her relationship would cost me Ava forever, but instead, it ended up pulling us closer together, revealing strengths in us that either of us had not yet discovered. In the end, I consider myself no more of an a-hole than a lighthouse trying to guide ships away from the rocky shores. I just wanted my best friend to find her way home, even if it meant standing alone on a dark night, breaking through the fog of confusion. Sometimes love means we have to speak difficult truths, whether we're prepared for the fallout or not. So am I the a-hole? Maybe. But sometimes being right doesn't come without telling the hardest truths and advocating for love